So, Sheriff Lamb, thanks for joining us. You're down at the border right now in Arizona. What are things like right now?
Well, we're about 50 to 60 miles off the border here in our county, but we are on the south end of our county is the Native American reservation that actually runs into Mexico. And then we also have the I-10 freeway that cuts right through the heart of our county, which is one of the main arteries for the cartels. And so, I mean, it's crazy right now. Like the desert is full of people. The freeways, I mean, my guys, it's like shooting fish in a barrel when they're pulling people over. Almost all the vehicles they stop are load vehicles, human load vehicles. So yeah, the problem's getting worse and worse by the day. And we have an administration that's not doing anything about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said you're encountering all these kinds of vehicles. Is there really like a difference that you're noticing this administration, like that you're actually seeing in terms of more, migrants coming over, all that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, of course. Night and day difference, 1,000 times different than what it was under President Trump. President Trump's policies were working. And we felt like we had a place at the table. We didn't stop border security, but there's a big difference between 400,000 apprehensions in a year and 2 million apprehensions in a year. Right now, we're just on a collision course with catastrophe because these open border policies are going to ruin America, whether it's the human trafficking or whether it's the drugs that they're allowing in here, like fentanyl, which has become the leading cause of death for Americans between 18 and 45. And we know exactly where it's coming from. And yet we're doing nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. And like, how often do you encounter people like, once a day, every couple of days, kind of tell me what like a day looks like there when finding people coming over.
Oh no. I mean, my canines are dedicated to interdiction, which means they work the I-10 freeway all day long. Those guys are probably getting 4 or 5 stops a day that are load vehicles. Then you've got the desert area. When we send our aviation unit out to work in conjunction with Border Patrol, it's probably anywhere between 10 and 30 apprehensions or apprehensions assist with Border Patrol when we do that. Now you got the heat coming in, and what the cartel does is they leave people for dead out there, or smugglers get lost or injured, and they call 911, and guess who responds? We do, with the Border Patrol. Mm-hmm. And then we had one last year, I think, where they left the guy behind. We finally found the guy. They called 911. We finally found him. He was laying under a Palo Verde tree. We gave him 3 bags of IV to bring him back. And while we were doing that, there were 7 more 911 calls on the board for lost, injured, or left behind smugglers. The cartels do it as a tactic so that we go after that one person and they push 10, 20 more people through.
Sure. And how does that kind of work? Do they bring them like right up to the border and, just kind of like push them across? Or going under? What does that kind of look like? The kind of the methods that, like they actually use there getting over, or is this after they cross the border and they're, a couple miles into U.S. territory? How's that kind of work?
Well, it depends on where you go. Yuma sector, Del Rio, those are different than what the Tucson sector is. A lot of those people just walk across they just walk over where the wall ends and they walk across and then they just turn themselves in. Nobody in our sector is giving up. They're not called what we call layups. These are people that are dressed in camouflage clothes and carpet shoes. They run from us in the desert and they run from us on the freeways, and we get into pursuits all the time with them. So very different type of people. We get predominantly military-aged men, predominantly Mexican males, Guatemalans. That's who's coming into counties like mine. So it varies on where you go throughout that southern border. But what it is in my county, look, I told you I'm 50, 60 miles in, and yet I can take you to 100 spots in my desert that are littered with camouflage clothes and carpet shoes and backpacks like a military unit just invaded us. Mm-hmm. It's unacceptable.
So that's kind of the telltale sign there, the camouflage that they're wearing.
Yeah, that and the fact that you stop a ton of them.
Yeah, yep. And I want to talk about 2 kind of things that are going on with, the Biden administration specifically to immigration. So I think yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security just gave the go-ahead for, agents themselves to determine asylum cases. How do you think, if you've heard about that, how do you think that's really going to impact this? I mean, they're talking about there's this big, glut of people, trying to get over talking about how they have asylum, but now you're letting actual, individual agents judge those cases on a case-by-case basis. What do you think about that?
I did read about that. I don't know, because you can't trust this government. You can't trust this Mayorkas and all these policies. I mean, I just don't feel like their policies are set in place to benefit the American people. Now, if they'll truly let the agents do it, then this could be a positive thing for the agents. The agents can make that determination right away and send them back. But I read in the article, they're also saying that they're going to try to do it within 6 months, which means that you're letting them into the country, and then you're what are you doing until that 6 month period? You know that they're not doing the Remain in Mexico program. They just totally ignored the courts on that. So look, I just have a hard time believing that this is a thing that's going to benefit the American people, because thus far, everything they've done is done the opposite. It's been destructive to America. They're not America first policies.
And I was also kind of wondering, like, what are the kind of questions you ask when someone's coming here, seeking asylum? I mean, how do you actually make that determination? Like, where's the evidence that, are you just taking their word for it? What have you heard from, your friends in the DHS maybe?
Well, what they do is that's why they do their ID dumps. If you go over down like by Yuma, anybody that's going to come across, they dump their IDs, all of their passports, their identification cards, all of their birth certificates. They dump it on the other side of the border. Then they walk across and claim asylum. Why? Because they can claim they're from whatever country, and we have no ability to verify that anymore. And so this is, they're playing the game that they need to play, and somebody is coaching them along, and that's the cartels. They know exactly how to play this game. So the cartels are charging those people, and then they're also charging people $5,000-$6,000 to be trafficked in through the deserts and on the freeways and stuff like what we deal with. And the reason they do that is because a lot of these people already have criminal histories here in this country. They've already been convicted of crimes here, or maybe they're criminals in their own country, or maybe they just fall within that parameter, that very narrow parameter that the government is going to use to send them back.
So you're talking about people who have been back, a couple of times then, people who have criminal history in the U.S. and maybe got deported or something, sent back to Mexico or to, South and Central America. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yeah. So we have people, that just because they get arrested here and convicted of a crime and maybe even do time, and then we send them back, we'd be naive as Americans to think that they're going to stay back there. They're going to come right back into this country again. And now we've got people that are criminals that we've kicked out of the country once, which is hella hard, by the way. It's not easy to just get somebody out. ICE will tell you it's anywhere between 6 and 8 years. And now they're saying because of the influx, the amount of people, it's probably 8 to 10, maybe even 12 years before you can actually kick somebody out anymore.
And I know they're also talking about Title 42 and if they're going to suspend that or not. That could have some pretty bad repercussions just in terms of, even more people trying to come across, right?
Well, yeah, they didn't even need to remove it, because I just think they just need to not enforce it, which is what they're doing for the most part. And then they also just need to put it out there, because just the mere mention of the fact that they're going to take it away has we've seen an increase in the amount of people showing up to the border. The cartel loves it because this brings the clients right to their doorstep. Imagine having a business where the government brought every client right to your doorstep for you to be able to charge them and take advantage of them. And that's exactly what we're doing for the cartels. We're putting the client right at their doorstep, and they're making money hand over fist, and they're abusing these people. They're raping the women. They're using the children as pawns. They're extorting the men for more money. And then they're bringing dangerous drugs into our communities that are killing our loved ones. Like everywhere, check. It's all terrible for America.
Total national security threat there. But, my last question here is, say another president gets elected in the future, someone who, decides, finish the wall, really, shore up the border there. But what's the next step after that? What's the next step to, curb illegal immigration, really stop these problems, where they start? What do we do?
Well, first and foremost, the easiest path would be to go back to what President Trump was doing, because it was working. You've got to go hold Mexico accountable to protect their side as well, not just let people run right through their country, right up to our borders. So go back to what President Trump's policies were. They were working. Number two, we need Congress and Senate to stop complaining about immigration and using it as a political tool every 2 years.
Sure.
And instead, they should.
And both sides do that. They use that as the political football. We see that with Republicans all the time.
For anybody out there, if you haven't wondered why they don't fix certain things, it's because they want to use them as political tools. And that's immigration, abortion, gun control. These are all things that they will never fix. You know why? Because they want to bitch about it every 2 years.
Totally.
And they want to bicker and fight, and they want to use it to to manipulate you to vote the way they want you to vote. And so these are things that they're never going to fix. But what they should do is they should do what their job is, why the American people sent them there. And they should put some immigration in place that makes sense, that creates a pathway that actually works, as opposed to, we've got people that are really good people, really educated, professional people who are in a waiting line trying to come into this country legally. Totally. And we're not letting them, but we're letting everybody and their dog come across the southern border, regardless of who they are, where they came from, or what kind of status they had in their own countries. Mm-hmm. You've heard it. They're emptying out their prisons in a lot of these other countries and dumping them right into ours.
Yeah, totally. And it seems like, we got to start with border security there before we even really have that conversation about, the pathway. I think just securing the border might be the first approach. But, Sheriff Lamb, stay safe out there. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. And come support us at protectamericanow.com. We're sheriffs standing up for the rule of law, standing against these crazy policies, and we're standing up for the American people and the Constitution.
Awesome. You heard it from him. Thanks.